I've been toying around with selling the M1 MacBook Air, and I have a few options in mind. When you need a device, I'm a big fan of buying the best thing that you can at the time, but if the upgrade is just a want, it can be a little more difficult to figure out what's the best way to spend your money. With Walmart adding the M1 MacBook Air to their lineup for an insanely good price, it's on sale right now for $649. Now that gets you the 8 gigabytes of RAM model with 8-core CPU and 7-core GPU. That would be perfect for somebody who doesn't have any heavy video or photo editing workflows, as you'd hit that 8 gig RAM cap pretty quickly if you're doing more than having some Chrome tabs open, checking email, browsing social media. So the M1 MacBook Air that I've got was the 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU. That cost me a whopping $1,413.39 after tax. I launched this very YouTube channel with that M1 MacBook Air. At the time, I had it hooked up to a single 32-inch LG monitor, and it became frustratingly apparent that I needed more computer to do what I was trying to do. I was hitting the RAM cap, I was filling up the solid-state drive on the computer, and really pushing the limits of a passively cooled machine when I really needed something that was actively cooled. So it became my travel machine. I still have it around. I use it on the couch, browse the internet, pay bills, do finances, use it to offload files if I go on trips. So I have a copy on the Mac and a copy on an external drive before I clear out the SD card if I'm going to be shooting for multiple days at a time. So why then do I want to replace it? Seems like it's working extremely well for my use case right now. Well, I have that itch that can only be scratched by buying a new piece of technology. So, important things to ask yourself in these situations: what's my budget? What's my use case? And these are the things that I struggle with the most. Because the M1 MacBook Air is still an insanely capable machine, especially for how I use it right now, and it really doesn't need to be upgraded. But I have been planning on getting a new laptop at some point anyways, and I feel comfortable spending about $1,400 to maybe a little over $2,000 on a laptop. And I have a few scenarios in mind that include maybe an upgrade, a downgrade, do nothing, and then the wild card. So let's take a look at the configurator. The upgrade case, I'm going to say, is the M3 MacBook Air. It makes logical sense that this M1 MacBook Air did everything I needed it to do. And so let's just upgrade to the latest and greatest model of the Air and forego the price tag of the Pro for this first scenario. So you get a slightly more powerful version of the computer I have today, and arguably a slightly better looking one at that. However, I know 16 gigs of RAM isn't going to be enough, and I know that I can fill up a 512 gigabyte hard drive like that, especially while using Final Cut Pro for a video project. So you go look at a 13-inch M3 MacBook Air, 8-core CPU, 10-core GPU, starts at $1,499. I'm going to want to upgrade the memory to at least the 24 gigabytes. That's the best you can do there, an extra $200. And of course, I want a 1 terabyte hard drive, again, extra $200. Power adapter, no need for the 70 watt in this case, and I don't need any software added for it either. So that brings us to a grand total of $1,899, and that's before tax, which for what you're getting is effectively a pro-level machine that is passively cooled. Seems like a steep price tag though, still on the surface. I'm not sure that I would get $1,900 worth of value out of this machine, especially with the use case that I've outlined today. Now let's take a look at the downgrade option. I'm going to call the downgrade option the 11-inch iPad Pro with Magic Keyboard. So let's go configure that and see how much that thing's going to cost. So the 11-inch iPad Pro starts at $1,000. 512 gigabyte hard drive. I would go with standard glass. I would also go Wi-Fi only. I'm going to want the Apple Pencil Pro because I have the original generation of, actually I guess it's the second generation of Apple Pencil. Maybe the most confusing naming conventions that they have out there for a product at this point. So this comes out to a whopping $1,627. Now I probably would do a trade-in here and trade in the iPad mini. I think that's going for somewhere around $225 right now. So I don't know, that gets you down to $1,400 out the door, plus tax, for an 11-inch iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil Pro. Now that's starting to seem like at least a little bit of a better deal in my head. I do like the Apple Pencil experience. The OLED screen on the iPad Pro is definitely a step above what is in the 13-inch MacBook Air. And playing around with the new Magic Keyboard in the store, it's a really great accessory. They took a really great accessory and they made it even better. So that covers the upgrade and what I'm calling the downgrade. Of course, there's an option here to do nothing and just, use the devices that I have, wait it out a little bit longer. I'm sure there's going to be an M4 version of this stuff coming out shortly, and wait until I actually need to do an upgrade. But where's the fun in that? So what I'm calling the wildcard mode here is actually go back to laptop only. When I launched this channel, I was laptop only. I had the MacBook Air. It sat attached to the monitor, and I effectively used it as a desktop 99% of the time. So for this to become remotely feasible, I would have to sell the M2 Max Mac Studio and sell or trade in the M1 MacBook Air. Now, last I looked, you get about $450 for the MacBook Air. Those prices have gone down recently, so it might be a little less than that now. As I'm sitting here making this video, the Mac Studio trade-in value is at $980. Let's just call it $1,400 trade-in value if I traded in the MacBook Air and the Mac Studio. And I would be after the 14-inch MacBook Pro. And I have a really hard time in this instance, since this is not really a need, it's a want, but figuring out if I would want to get the M3 Pro or M3 Max chip. I really like the M2 Mac Studio. I'd argue I don't really push the chip that hard. It's helpful to have the extra RAM to keep a bunch of different programs open at the same time. Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, Lightroom, Photoshop. I don't ever have to crash out or close out of programs because I'm running out of memory. So for this configurator, I'm just going to look at M3 Pro. That's probably reasonable. I edit 4K video, and I will want a bigger hard drive and probably a little bit more RAM. So I'm going to select a slight upgrade on the Pro chip. 36 gigs of RAM. It's close enough to the 32 gigs of RAM that I have today in the M2 Max Mac Studio. Terabyte SSD is fine. I don't need any software. So that comes out to $2,800, and $2,800 minus the $1,400 trade-in is $1,400. So that would actually be less expensive than buying a MacBook Air for me, and pretty much in the ballpark of getting the iPad Pro. The downside of the iPad Pro is I know that I would still want a laptop. I know that the iPad, even as good as it's gotten so far with Final Cut and DaVinci Resolve, it just isn't a laptop replacement still for me yet. And I enjoy the touch experience, kind of unique to the iPad, but I also enjoy having a laptop that I can take around and, if I really need to do heavy duty photo or video editing while I'm on the go or while I'm traveling, I have that option. So what do you think? What would you do if you were in my situation? Would you wait it out until the fall or the end of the year until we get some more Apple announcements? Or do you have your eyes set on a new Apple device? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.